On today's show, Ty Lue thinks the Clippers are being counted out, and he might be right. Is this the Clippers' year? Coming up on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On NBA Friday. Wes Goldberg here with Adam Mares. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket, YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We got a bunch of things to get to here today. Ty Lue told ESPN that he feels people are counting the Clippers out after losing Paul George, but that he can't wait to prove everybody wrong. The Clippers did lose Paul George, but they also added Derrick Jones Jr., Nick Batum, Chris Dunn. Lue also added Jeff Van Gundy to his coaching staff. He's going to take over as his lead assistant and defensive coordinator. Adam, we got a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. We've got the new Netflix show coming up, but we'll talk about Ty Lue. Do you think he's right that people are prematurely counting out the Clippers?
Well, every coach gets to play this card this time of year, right? It's August. Even the Boston Celtics, I think, are probably playing the nobody believes in us card right now. So it's sort of, we're familiar with this tune. But what I will say is the way we talk, and when I say we, I mean NBA analysts in general, all across all spectrums, we seem to talk about the accumulation of talent, and we start from there, right? And they lost talent. They lost Paul George. But basketball, I mean, especially if there's anything we've learned from this Olympics or really from the last several years or of several decades of watching basketball, it's not always just the assemblage of talent. You have to make those things fit. And I think with Paul George, as great as he is, he was a third player in an era where I think big threes didn't necessarily make sense. So there could be more clarity with that roster now. Okay, here's who we are. Some guys like Bones Highland get a chance to elevate into bigger roles. So I think there is something there about, hey, we might have lost talent, aggregate talent, but our team makes more sense and we know better who we are at this moment. So easy note to play. And I would say maybe he's right.
Yeah, I mean, the West is so good, but beyond just how the Clippers stack up, I do think we are overlooking them a little bit because we get so distracted by the fact that they had that. You were talking about the accumulation of talent. Their offseason was headlined by talent going out in Paul George. But if you just ignore the fact that they lost Paul George and you just look at the roster on paper, it's a pretty good roster, right? You've got Kawhi Leonard. You've got James Harden, who had a good year last year. You've got good players. You've added Derrick Jones Jr., Nick Batum, Chris Dunn. You got Ty Lue, who's one of the best head coaches in the NBA. There's a lot to like about this team. It's just so easy to kind of get lost in the sauce of, well, you lost Paul George, you can't possibly be good. I would argue that the Clippers' biggest thing has never been the lack of talent or whatever it was. It was health, right? It's always been health related, and with or without Paul George, the Clippers were only going to go as far as Kawhi Leonard could get them healthy. And the inflammation in the right knee kind of stalls his playoffs last year, short circuits it. He plays in just 2 games in the first round for the second straight postseason. They lose to the Dallas Mavericks in the first round this past year. And so that was the reason they lost. And I would say that if they end up not going back to the Western Conference Finals or something like that, it's going to probably be mostly because Kawhi just isn't right. Because when he is right and he's playing with James Harden and you're coached by Ty Lue and all that stuff is working, I don't know. Like, I'm not taking them to win the Western Conference, but I wouldn't be shocked if they made a deep playoff run either.
I mean, this is the story of Kawhi Leonard really for the last several years is he going to be healthy at the right time? I will say that is the one thing about losing Paul George that really hurts is you did have a Kawhi Leonard replacement whenever Kawhi Leonard was out. Paul George just kind of elevates himself into that role, which he's obviously most comfortable doing. And then when Kawhi was there, he'd have to step back to the third place role. I think that is a real significant loss. And when you talk about the basketball in the era of parity, which is what we are in right now, it really is a war of attrition. Who can stay healthy? Who can be the most rested going into the playoffs? And losing Paul George obviously represents a vulnerability to that depth. But as I mentioned, there are guys on this team. You mentioned Chris Dunn, Bones Highland. There are guys that I think are in line. Even Amir Coffey's been coming on lately. I think he is on the upswing to have a good year. Terrence Mann. There are youngish players on this roster who I think are in line to be more comfortable in elevated roles. Bones Hyland in particular, I saw him up close and personal in Denver. You know, he has to figure it out. He had to mature as a person and as a player, but the raw talent is insane. The upside is insane. Yeah. He helped Denver win a playoff game in his rookie season. So this is a guy that knows how to play and has some talent. Does it come together for him? There's an opportunity, and if he does for just one or two of those guys, then I think you are looking at a team that just makes more coherent sense in the playoffs.
Yeah, you hit on something earlier where it's not the era of big threes anymore, and it's a good point, and I don't want to overlook it because you look at how rosters are constructed now, you need two guys at the top and then really good depth. And you're absolutely right. When Kawhi was out, it was Paul George who was able to step in. They don't really have that guy anymore. James Harden, I don't think he's quite that guy anymore that you want just scoring the ball a bunch. He's not MVP James Harden anymore, but he can run your offense through pick and rolls and things like that. But maybe instead of Paul George, it'll just be the depth now. And it still doesn't change the fact that with or without Paul George, you weren't winning the championship if Kawhi wasn't healthy anyway. So you were always sort of relying on Kawhi to be healthy when it mattered the most. He had one of his healthiest regular seasons in a Clippers jersey last year, and it still didn't work out, right? Still the tire blew out in the playoffs. But Ty Lue talked about in this ESPN piece how they have tried everything with the managing the injuries and all these things. And he's like, basically was like, look, I've tried all of it. We've tried the load management part. We've tried playing through it. We've tried doing all this stuff. And it just hasn't worked. And he's basically saying, like, if we can get healthy, we think we could beat anybody in the West. And the way that Kawhi and James Harden looked last year, I'm not going to count him out. I'm at the point now where I'm not counting on the Clippers ever to be healthy or anything anyway. This is the last team I'm ever going to believe in. This is
why this topic is so funny. Like, nobody can go all in on the Clippers. You just can't do it.
No, you can't.
You can never go full Clippers.
You're gonna be disappointed no matter what. They got me too, Adam. They got me in January, February of last year. I made a rule. I said I'm never gonna buy in on the Clippers, and I'm like, man, this team looks really good. I think I'm buying in on the Clippers, and then they disappoint you. That's what the Clippers do.
I'm gonna disagree with one part of what you said there, though, about you're channeling Ty Lue about they can beat anyone in the West. I don't think anyone can beat everyone in the West. This is my hot take. I think every team has somebody they're vulnerable to, and teams that they are just, favorably matched up against. And the Clippers are no different. And when I look at them, in years past, they've had multiple centers. And when I thought about them as a matchup for Denver, obviously Denver got them in the bubble back in 2020, a very surprising comeback win, and then has kind of had their number since then in the regular season matchups. But one of the things that made me think maybe this year is different is they had multiple centers, like true centers you could throw out, which I think if you're going to go up against the Denver Nuggets, you need to have multiple bigs. What did Minnesota have? And by the way, Denver took them to Game 7, all the way to the wire in Game 7, but they had 3 true centers that they could throw at Nikola Jokic to wear him down over time. They just have Ivica Zubac, and now you're talking about Kai Jones, Mo Bamba. Get out of here. Those guys are not guys that you're going to throw at Jokic. Zubac has been a great matchup for Jokic. I think he guards him about as well as anybody in the NBA, but he is one guy. And after that, they're really, really thin. And so I look at it and I say, I do think they're a good team against a lot of teams in the West, but they're going to have their own vulnerabilities.
Yeah, it's going to be harder for them to play small also without Paul George, right? Like, they've got Nick Batum. They've got the bodies, but they don't have, like, the functional skill that you need to play small. Playing small isn't just about being small. It's about counteracting the small ball with the skill, right? And I don't know. It's going to be a little bit harder, obviously, now that they don't have Paul George. So that might not be a tool that Ty Lue has in his toolbox. He will have James Harden for a full year. They're going to be able to run more pick and roll. I think they're going to be a very pick and roll heavy team where they used to be mostly ISO and jump shots. Now that you've got Harden, he's working on that pick and roll with Zubac. That was a big story last year. And I think it just takes a lot off of Kawhi's plate so that Kawhi could just do Kawhi things, hopefully, for the Clippers when the playoffs come around and hopefully that he's healthy. So I think they're going to look a little bit different in this ESPN story. I guess Ty Lue was trying to get the secret out of Eric Spoelstra while they were in Paris for Team USA about how to play zone defense. They've got Jeff Van Gundy, who's their defensive coordinator now, which is very interesting. After years on the broadcast, now he's going to be your defensive coordinator. It'll be interesting to see what kind of fingerprints Jeff Van Gundy leaves on this scheme. But they're going to look a little bit different. So you got all that. Plus the Intuit Dome, Adam. Had to bring that up.
I forgot about it. I mean, now I think I'm with Ty Lue. He's right.
Intuit Dome. This is great. All right, let's move on. Netflix announced its quarterback-style NBA show this week. What are the moments we're most excited to get a behind-the-scenes look at? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot on this program. It's America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little bit different to talk to you about now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. I just want to repeat the offer for those that might have just missed it. If you put a $5 bet down on FanDuel, something you were going to do anyway for the NFL season, you're going to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. That is a no-brainer. Just do that. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. We'll be right back. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Best way to support the program is to leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app and subscribe on YouTube. Adam, Netflix announced its newest sports series called Starting 5. It's premiering October 9th. And here's how they're advertising it. Starting 5, a new 10-part Netflix sports series, provides an intense behind-the-scenes look at the 2023-24 NBA season through the eyes of 5 of the league's biggest players: Jimmy Butler, Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, Domantas Sabonis, and Jason Tatum. The series captures their battles on and off the court as they chase greatness, push through injuries, and balance the demands of family and legacy. James pushes himself harder than ever to stay healthy and dominant in his 21st season, while Edwards electrifies with his rapid rise. Butler's relentless drive propels the Heat. Sabonis anchors the Kings with his versatile play, and Tatum leads the Celtics in their quest for a record 18th championship. Starting 5 delivers an unfiltered view of life at the pinnacle of professional basketball. So there's your synopsis, Adam, official synopsis. What are you hoping to see? What are you most excited about? I've got a list of things. Do you want me to go to the list, or is there something that stands out to you?
I'm just going to start by saying I'm the wrong demo for this. I don't watch these things. I didn't watch quarterbacks. I don't know why. And then LeBron, Jimmy Butler.
You're not a Hard Knocks guy?
Yeah, not a Hard Knocks guy. And I'm not so interested in all these guys. LeBron, we get the manufactured LeBron anytime he's on television. Tatum's so boring. Jimmy Butler had his least interesting season in the last 10. And Sabonis I'm not necessarily into. Ant's charisma is the only thing that's going to carry this for me.
Anthony Edwards is going to steal this show. We know that, right?
He's
going to steal the show. It's an absolute lock. I'm very excited to see Anthony Edwards and how he interacts with Karl Anthony Towns, Chris Finch, and Rudy Gobert, and just sort of how he commands the locker room, right? Because by the time we got to the Western Conference Finals, it was very obvious that it was Anthony Edwards' team. I'm interested to see sort of the process and sort of the little flashbulb moments throughout the season where it becomes clear to the Timberwolves that Anthony Edwards was sort of the alpha in that organization. So I'm excited for that. I do have a list of things I want to behind-the-scenes look at, and I'm going to be disappointed if we don't get them. And the first one that comes to mind, you mentioned it was Jimmy Butler's least interesting season. I like how they advertised it as propelling the Heat with his relentlessness. Propelling the Heat to what? A first-round exit? That's what we're talking about?
Yeah,
so
that's fascinating.
Yeah, yep. But the off-the-court stuff, that's interesting to me. Like Jimmy Butler? Do we get a behind-the-scenes look at the makeup and all that stuff? I'm excited for that. I'm excited. I want all of the I want all of the footage. I want all of the footage of him filming the Fall Out Boy music video when he's on a horse. I want all of that stuff. I want him just like gallivanting through Manhattan, finding ice cream and pitching his coffee. Like Big Face Coffee will be like plugged every chance.
Here's the thing, though. So I just said this about LeBron, about how every time he's on camera, we get the camera version of LeBron. Is Jimmy Butler? Are we here now? Is some of this stuff like
a little bit?
You know what I mean? It's cute, but it's like we're kind of seen behind the curtain a little too much now.
Yeah, it's totally fair, but I want it. So I just it's just entertainment. It's pure entertainment. That's what it's all for.
I'm anti-entertainment Adam over here.
You are a little bit. You're poo-pooing on this whole thing.
What are we gonna get from Tatum? Like, if you just think about storylines, Ant and Tatum are the two guys that I think have the most interesting storylines. But Tatum, the storyline for Tatum that's so fascinating to I think most of us is the most successful yet somewhat unsatisfying season. You know, I have to imagine in so many ways.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to get that at all, though? Or is that stuff that you don't want to put the cameras on?
That's sort of what I'm interested in, is him kind of handling the media questioning of him not being a top 5 guy, how that was a storyline. Oh, if the Celtics don't win it, it's because of Tatum. How he sort of handles that throughout the season, and if we do get any vulnerable moments from Jason Tatum, who when you talk about camera, like these players on camera, it's been robotic with him, right? It's just been him and Jaylen Brown have been always saying we support each other, we don't care whose team it is, blah blah blah. Like they always say that. I wonder if we ever get like a vulnerable moment where he's just like watching First Take and Stephen A is just going off on how Jason Tatum can't carry the team. I don't know that he ever did that, but like for instance. Right. And he's just like on his couch and just being like, you know what, bleep this guy. And just like we get like a vulnerable, like I am good enough. Why do people keep questioning me? I do wonder if we get that. Also, how far back is this whole process starting? Are we going to get the moment where he realizes that they traded Marcus Smart, that they traded for Drew Holiday, that they kind of made these deals and get maybe like a reaction in real time on how all that stuff happened too? I'd be a little interested in that.
I would too, but I would doubt it. But what I will say is that in you talking about it made me wonder who those are the stars of the show, like they're following those guys around. But of course, other people will pop into these, right? I mean, there's other people. So who's going to make the best cameo or supporting cast sort of appearance on this? And it made me think Mazzula might be a guy that sort of steals the storyline there. He's a weird guy.
He is.
And we might get a little bit of like he might. I just imagine the times he pops in, we're like, what?
Yeah, there was a moment where the Celtics were in Miami, and I was in the Celtics locker room. I don't remember who I was talking to, but Joe Mazzula just ran through and did a full somersault just through the middle of the locker room. And
this is a true story.
That's a true story that happened. Yeah, did
an actual literal somersault through the.
Yeah, somersault's when you go head over heel, right? You just kind of
What?
Just went right to the locker room. And Marcus Smart.
I hate that this team won. What are we doing? How could the NBA let this happen? Oh no!
So that's just gonna happen in this video. It's gonna happen in this series. That's a great call. Mazzula is absolutely gonna steal the show. I don't think that there's really anybody on Minnesota, although we could get surprised. I don't know, but Miami probably not. Celtics, other than Joe Mazzula.
What about Jaime Jaquez? You don't think he'll have a moment? I mean, he'll be in here a little bit. Is he not that compelling?
Yeah, nobody in Miami is going to talk that much. I'm actually surprised. I'm a little surprised that Jimmy Butler is even doing this. But Jimmy Butler is he beats to his own drum, not necessarily the Heat culture drum. But LeBron, this is what I'm excited about. Yeah. I am so excited for the moment that after the Lakers win the in-season tournament, LeBron James is sitting there with his Los Lobos tequila, with the bottle in frame, and talking about how important it was for his legacy to win the in-season tournament and how it's something Michael Jordan never did.
You're right.
I am so excited for that.
I didn't think about this. The in-season tournament might actually make the best appearance in all of this because we're so far removed from it that it seems silly now, but we'll have to relive the celebration of it, the Vegas night out and all that stuff.
Yeah. How they celebrate that little banner going up at Staples or Crypto or whatever. And I can't, nobody cares. Lakers fans don't care about winning the in-season tournament. Nobody cares. And I can't. If they skip it, that would be not even an
honestly, that would be the ultimate condemnation of this stupid tournament. Is if they don't even show it. It's it didn't make the cut.
It didn't make the cut. It wasn't big enough. It wasn't important enough. Adam Silver would have the whole thing wiped away. No, we know LeBron is gonna play it up so much, and I'm so excited for that. And just the memes that come out of that. It makes you want to throw up. Sabonis just got
it. Though that's a great take. Memes. There will be a lot of memes that come out of it for sure.
100%. It's and I took that personal. We're gonna get something like that, right? We're gonna get something like that. Shout out to Sabonis. Just glad you're doing this, man. We needed the Kirk Cousins of the series. He's probably going to be that. I'm a little excited about Sabonis just being out and about in Sacramento. Yeah. While LeBron is celebrating the in-season tournament in Las Vegas and all this stuff. We're just gonna get Sabonis on J Street, downtown Sacramento, just getting recognized by guys, and we're gonna be all right, I guess that's content. I have no idea what to expect from Sabonis in this thing.
I mean, maybe then sometimes that's the best spot to be in, right? No expectations, low expectations, and but the truth is, the Kings are an interesting team coming off of a great year, and then a little bit underwhelming one. There might be good stories there. We might get a little insight.
Mike Brown could also be a scene stealer.
Oh, you're right. That's him. The cameo stealer. That's him. He's gonna steal the scenes he's in.
I love Mike Brown. I think there's going to be scenes where he thinks the show is about him, and I think that's fine. And I'm very excited about it. Who will be the best player in the league in 5 years? We count down to the weekend after this. Welcome back to Locked On NBA. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Well, Adam, it's Friday, which means it's time to count down to the weekend with our weekly power
I'm not
rankings.
a system player. I am a system player.
Go power rankings. Yeah. Go power rankings.
There it is. So, as you probably know, if you've been listening to this Friday edition of Locked On NBA for a while, that we count down, and usually we try to keep it topical. You know, something that the internet is talking about, the basketball internet is talking about. And this week, I don't know if you saw this, they did the survey over on ESPN where they asked a handful of questions: who's going to be MVP, who's the best player right now, who's going to win the title. But they also asked who's going to be the best player in 5 years. And this was a survey, by the way, I always laugh. 18 people, not exactly a great sample size, kind of a small little poll here. But the answers came back. Out of 18 people surveyed, Victor Wembanyama got the answer from 12 of them. Shea and Luka each got 2. Anthony Edwards and Jokic each got 1. I think it's a great question, and it's so hard. And if you go back, I kind of love this. Reddit does this every now and then, like the NBA Reddit. They'll always put, like, let's look back at 5 years ago what people were saying was, and it's always way off. You know, like Zion was probably number 1, you know, by right now, by people's predictions and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. But I'm going to tell you,
Who do you think is the most Zion one on that list that was named?
Karl Anthony Towns, you know, like
No, I'm talking about the list now. Like what are the 5? So we got Shea, Luka, Wemby, Jokic, and who's the 5th guy?
Anthony Edwards.
Anthony Edwards. So who's going to be the one 5 years from now where we're just like, I can't believe we thought this guy was going to be that?
Man,
that's the problem. All of those guys are already good. It's the only one could be Victor. It can only be Victor Wembanyama, and it's not going to be.
What it is in the last 5 years, longevity has gotten extended, right? So I think it almost becomes less that the incumbents will take over, and maybe we can see around the corner a little bit.
Well, I'm a little surprised. Did we just forget about Giannis? He's only 29. He'll be 34 years old in 5 years.
Well, not only they asked who's the best player in the NBA right now, and he did not receive a single vote. Which, again, like, I mean, Jokic is my guy. I think he's the best player. But I do think that there's, like, room for conversation for some of these other people, including Giannis. And it's wild to me that he has fully fallen off in that way.
Talk about overlooked, man.
Yeah. That's a good spot for him to be in, though. You know what?
Yes,
like,
I think he likes that spot.
That's his spot. So,
but it was just like it was only like 3 years ago that he's hitting threes against LeBron and putting the crown on his head, and we were like, oh my god, like this is it. And he was like sort of the face, like the next face of the NBA. He was the Anthony Edwards at that point, and then he has a championship. So this is a little weird how overlooked he's going. It does.
We move on very, very, very quickly.
All right, top 5.
So top 5, but I'm going to give you my 3 honorable mentions here.
Okay.
I have Devin Booker actually here as my wildest out of, like crazy one. I really like Devin Booker. He's 27 years old. In 5 years, he'll be 32. You're still in your prime. I do think there's a world where Devin Booker sort of reaches this next. We've seen him he gets as hot as anyone when he gets hot, and he stays in that zone for like weeks at a time.
Yeah.
I do think that he is a guy that just has so many different skills that if it comes together for him, I could see him winning a title or two and being in this conversation.
He does have that little bit of like that little chutzpah like that you need to kind of be that guy, right? Yeah. He's got that mean streak, and he's also got that little extra something that Jason Tatum doesn't really have, right? Where I don't know that we'd ever get to the point where, and that's sort of the knock on Tatum, and maybe he'll reference this in his Netflix show, but it's like, do we ever really think this guy will be the best player in the league? But Devin Booker, it's out of bounds, and you kind of surprised me with it, and I don't hate it. If he was the best guy, it would be the first best player in the league to play like him since Kobe, basically. We haven't had like a scoring guard be the best player in the league.
And he shoots the ball just so well. I did have Tatum on here as well. And the thing with Tatum is I think he's going to be in his prime at this point as well. I just never see him being the best guy. He might be the winningest. He'll always be in that conversation, but I just kind of don't see him as the guy that we're going to say that's the best player. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. And I actually feel that way about, and this one's controversial, about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I think is phenomenal. And I know Thunder fans and Shai fans are going to be upset about this one. I think he's already like a top 4 or 5 player in the NBA right now, and he's so young that I understand why you would say he's going to be number 1. When the guys that are ahead of him on the top 5 list, I just don't think he's going to reach the heights that those guys reach. So I think he'll always be kind of like Tatum, really good, top 5 player for a long time, but never number 1.
You might be right about it because as skilled as he is he's not the physical specimen that an Anthony
Part of
Edwards
it.
is, or like a LeBron James was, where you could just, at the end of the day, you're so much stronger than everybody, and that stuff does just really matter when you're talking about going from being the fourth or fifth best guy in the league to the number one guy in the league. It's the little things, and if he tops out as the best, one of the best 4 or 5 guys in the NBA, that is fine, but he might not ever be number one.
I actually have one more honorable mention. It's LeBron James. I don't he's not aging, Wes. He's just kind of staying here. I don't know.
It's fair. It's totally fair.
All right, back to top 5. Number 5, and whenever we do lists, Wes, there's always one guy that makes the list every single time. It's Nikola Jokic.
Of course.
Nikola Jokic. He would be 34, I believe, at this point. 34. So he's kind of on the tail end of what you would expect him to still be in the prime. But his game is skill-based, not athleticism-based. At 34, I don't know if he's meaningfully going to, athletically be different than he is right now. He's so good and so dominant right now that I just think there's at least a chance. I wouldn't bet on him. That's why he's 5th odds, but there's a chance.
You have to have him on the list. He is the best player in the NBA right now. We're not talking about 10 years from now. We're talking about 5 years from now. Like you said, he'll still be in the middle of his prime at 34 years old. My only question is, will he still be in the NBA? Or will he be like so over it? He's just like, you know what? He could be best player in the world still, but playing for a different league.
That's so true, actually. After that, I'm going with Anthony Edwards.
At 4.
And I'm actually learning here on my list. I'm an idiot. I had Shea 5 actually on my thing. So actually Shea then Jokic. I screwed this list. But number 3 then here is Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
And this is where the top 3 are the ones that I actually think have a chance here. Here's the thing about Anthony Edwards. He's not the all-around guy like a Luka, just the mold of player, right? Does the balls in his hands nonstop. But I don't think that mold has to be that's been the mold in the LeBron era, so we're sort of used to like judging players almost off of that. The way we used to judge players off how much they reminded us of Michael Jordan and that mold. Well, we might swing back because Anthony Edwards can be such a dynamic scorer and one-on-one defender, and then solid at the other things. I think he's getting much better at reading the court, playmaking, second setting the table. But he is such a smooth shooter and scorer, and he's so young that 5 years from now, it might be that he's just the number one, give him the ball and he gets a bucket every single time player, a la a Kobe and a Michael. And if he is able to reach those heights, then I think he'll be that even if there's other players that are more well-rounded, do more of everything.
He also has the charisma factor where
100%.
if it's just going to give him like a 20% bump in the minds of people, right? And they're just like, yeah, that's just the best guy. That's the guy. He's the alpha in the NBA, and he's just the guy now.
And also, like, he is a trash talker, He has that. And if you get a title, that becomes intimidation. I think when you don't have it, it's like, okay, young guy, what are you talking for? But if you get a title and you're that guy, like, he's a guy that's always looking for motivation, looking for a fight. So if you get that with a title at your back, that gives you something.
People who are in charge of this stuff, it feels like they want Anthony Edwards to be the best guy in the NBA 5 years from now. And so even if he's like not, maybe we just say he is. Like, we could totally get there.
That's so true. Number 2, I have Luka Doncic.
Okay.
He's still in his apex prime at this point. He's going to be 30 years old, I believe, 29 or 30, right in the smack dab of his prime. He's already in the conversation for best player currently. He just went to the finals. He obviously has some flaws, to his game. I think weight, attitude, some of this stuff, it could be overstated. But when you get to the top, West, like, people are going to hear this and think they're criticisms. When you're splitting hairs between the first best and second best, these little things become the margins that make you determine it. So that's all I'm picking at here. But he's obviously phenomenal. Which way will he break? Are his best years meaningfully ahead of him, or is he kind of at this plateau that he'll live at for 10 years? To be determined. But I think he has the second best odds of being the most dominant.
I know who's going to be your number 1, and I already disagree with it, but go ahead.
So number 1's Victor Wembanyama. It's 5 years from now. What is he, 20 years old? He'll be 25. That's sort of the first year of your prime. And here's how I look at it. I think Wembanyama is going to be the most dominant defensive player in the NBA this season. What will he be in 5 years? I'm talking 4 or 5 blocks, something we haven't seen. 4 or 5 blocks a game, I think, is on the table. 2-3 steals a game is on the table. Number 1 defense, if you just can put even an average group supporting cast around him, you have the number 1 defense. I think that's the floor. So that automatically puts you in a certain conversation. My concerns with him are really on the offensive end, but it's not like he's bad on offense. He shows flashes. I'm a little more bearish on his all-around offensive game developing into something on the level of a Luka or a Jokic or a LeBron, these type of all-time greats. I'm a little more bearish on that from him offensively, but it's not like he's going to be bad. Worst case scenario is going to be a pick and pop player, roll to the rim, put back dunk guy. Like, he's going to be useful. So to me, I think that it's not as much of a lock as most people would say, but I do think if there was a gun to my head, I had to make a bet. I would bet on Victor Wembanyama being number one.
So you and I are on the same page. People are just like, he's going to be the best guy. Forget it. It's already done. And I don't think it's a lock. I do have the same concerns in terms of him being an advantage creator on offense, a guy who makes his teammates better. Or does he top out as a pick and pop guy? Because if he does, we don't really associate best player in the league with dominant defender pick and pop player. That's not really the LeBron James kind of Nikola Jokic mold. We think of guys who just set the table on offense and just dominate the game that way.
Could he be Anthony Davis, a similar type player? Anthony Davis is a monster on defense, and offensively, he's really good. Like, he's one of the best offensive players in the NBA, but we don't say he's the best. He's nowhere close to that. Could he be that? The difference is, as great as Anthony Davis is on defense, Victor Wembanyama is a whole other level of impact. So can he be super Anthony Davis on defense and Anthony Davis on offense? And is that good enough? It might
with a
be.
more reliable jumper and
with a three.
And with a 3-pointer. And is that like 20% here, 30% there, increase on the sliders enough to make him the best player in the world? It totally can be. I think it's a great bet. I think it's a safe bet. I think if I were making this list, I'd still put Luka and maybe Anthony Edwards over him, just because I associate best player in the league with that kind of player more than Wembanyama. You know,
I could picture the Spurs having the number one defense, not like in the conversation for number, but the actual number one defense for 3-4 years in a row leading into that. And if you have that, it's like, okay, half the game is already checked off that you just get that with this guy. And what can he give you on out?
That'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Everydayers, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend.